when you talk to people, recognize who you're talking to. Don't project your own desires and your own motivations and what resonates with you onto everybody else, because they're not you. Assalamu alaikum. One of the most famous hadiths, most popular hadiths that just about every Muslim has heard in all kinds of contexts is one that is it's narrated by Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu. And it is related by Imam al-Bukhari at the very beginning of his text in the chapter of Babu Bad al-Wahi, which is the chapter of Revelation. And he starts the chapter of Revelation with a hadith that has nothing to do with Revelation, because he's trying to tell you that this hadith really judges all of your Islam and all of your actions. And it's the hadith of the intentions, where the Prophet ﷺ is reported to have said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, that verily actions are by intentions. فَمَنْ كَانَتْ هِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ, so whoever's migration is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger, فَهِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ, his migration or her migration is going to be to Allah and His Messenger. وَمَنْ كَانَتْ هِجْرَتُهُ لِدُنْيَا يُصِيبُهَا أَوْ امْرَأَةٍ يَنْكِحُهَا, and whoever migration is for a worldly thing that they're trying to get, or a spouse that they would like to get married to, فَهِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى مَا هَاجَرَ إِلَيْهِ, their migration is going to be towards that, whichever that they're seeking. So the Prophet ﷺ is basically saying that when it comes to your religious intentions and things that you're doing in this world, if your intention, your ultimate intention is to be near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger and to follow in the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ, then that is the lofty thing that you should be doing, and your reward will be in this world and in the next world. But if your intention is ultimately for things in this world, then that's all you're going to get. Hijratuhu ila ma hajara ilayhi. He doesn't even, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, doesn't even bother to repeat the thing. You know, whether it's a spouse or worldly thing, whatever it is that you're seeking, if your intention is just for something in this world, then whatever. That's basically how the Prophet ﷺ is, the message he's intending to deliver with that. Aw kama qala sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, you've heard this hadith explained in multiple ways and all of these things. But what I wanted to talk about specifically is a point about this hadith that Imam al-Nawawi mentions in his commentary on it. And Imam al-Nawawi says that when it comes to intentions, you can actually categorize the reason people worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala into three different categories. Three different reasons. The first category of people is the worshippers who are considered ibadatul tujjar. They do the worship of the merchants. And what is ibadatul tujjar? It's basically to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala while at the same time keeping a ledger, keeping a tab on, alright, so I do these prayers are for this many hasanat, and I do this action and I get this type of reward for it, and if I do this many times I get that reward. They keep track of these things. Imam al-Nawawi mentions this and he doesn't dismiss it, doesn't rebuke it, doesn't talk down about it. He just says this is one type. And it's actually an observation from the Quran itself, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ هَلْ أَدُلُّكُمْ عَلَى تِجَارَةٍ, that say to people, the Prophet ﷺ say to people, should I show you into a trade, into a merchant, a type of trade with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that will safeguard you and save you from severe punishment in the hereafter. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using this, and He's using rewards. Talks for, those people who ashab al-maymana, ashab al-yamin, the people of the right hand, those people are going to be rewarded this type of reward, that type of reward. And a lot of imagery in the Quran is talking about this. So that's one form. The second type, Imam al-Nawawi mentions, is ibadatul abid. Ibadatul abid is the worship of the slaves. And that one, what motivates slaves to act? It's punishment. Fear of punishment. And once again, it's an observation from the Quran, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran talks about hellfire and talks about the punishments that await of people who are the people of the left hand, ashab al-shimal, people who have been heedless all throughout their life, people who were disbelievers, people who deserve to go into hellfire for whatever evil that they've done during their lifetime. So again, because it's mentioned in the Quran, Imam al-Nawawi does not rebuke it, does not dismiss it. He just recognizes that there is this type of discourse in the Quran where you have the discourse of rewards and you have the discourse of punishment. There is a third discourse though. And the third discourse is what Imam al-Nawawi says about is ibadatul ahrar. This is the worship of the free people. In what sense does he mean free people? Because we're still ibadullah. In the sense that there are people in this world that they're not motivated by rewards and punishments. They want to do something because it's the right thing to do. And he says that those people worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because He is haqq. He deserves to be worshipped. هو أحق بالعبادة. هي حق الله على العباد. That whether there is a paradise or hell or not, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is still worthy of being worshipped. Even if this is the only time you're going to ever exist, He still is worthy of being praised and worshipped. And those people, that's what motivates them. What motivates them is to know that this is the right thing to do. What motivates them is a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah in Surah Al-Kahf says even, وَاصْبِرْ نَفْسَكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ. That be patient and steadfast with those who call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the day and in the night. What for? What are they looking for? يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ. They just want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the reason that they're doing this. And that's why He calls it ibadatul ahrar. Now, when we know these categories, and this is where my scattered thought comes in, I start to wonder, when we talk to people about Islam, when we talk to Muslims about Islam, especially the young guys out there, a lot of times I notice that we don't focus or we don't pay attention to how receptive or what type of message the crowd is receptive to. It's one thing for you to recognize yourself, that I know myself, like I'll speak personally. Personally, I would love to, my goal is I hope to be amongst the saved ones. I hope to be amongst the people of Ashabul Yameen. I want to get into paradise, of course. I would love the reward. And on the other hand, I am afraid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's punishment. I am afraid of going into hell. I don't want to go into hell. Wal-'iyadu billah. So I also recognize that. And as Imam al-Tahawi mentions in his Aqidah, that the station of the believer is actually to be in between those two. You're holding a balance between fear and hope. You're hopeful in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy, and at the same time you're afraid of His punishment. But it's one thing to discuss what's written in books and what the scholars tell you should be like. But it's another thing, because in books things are usually become black and white, very clear cut. It's this way or that way, categorized and broken down. But when you go in real life and just talk to people as they are and as they experience life, you find there is a lot of gray. And you find that people incline towards one way or another. For me, what pulls me in Islamic discourse, if you want to get me going, is talk to me about how do I connect better with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Talk to me about how to gain the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah, paradise is great, but the highest reward in paradise is when the believers, there is a select group of the believers who get to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the highest thing you can get. At that point, you actually forget you're in paradise, because there is no pleasure that any believer can even get close to than seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the greatest pleasure that you can have. I would love that. That's what I want. Tell me, how do I get there? So the discourse you would have with me is not going to be focused on rewards and punishments. Because, let's just be real, that stuff doesn't really get me going. That's not what gets me moving. What gets me moving is, what is the right thing to do? I want to do something because it's the right thing to do. I want to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because it's the right thing to do. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is deserving of that, regardless of paradise and regardless of hell. Other people, I have a friend of mine, he actually told me straight up, for him, he needs to be told about hell. That's what scares him. What motivates him is a little bit of fear. So when he thinks about sin, for example, he thinks about the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whereas some people, when they think about sin, punishment is kind of a secondary thing they think about. The primary thing they think about is the displeasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's like the disappointment, like, oh my God, I did this thing, and it's just, you know what I mean? I hope you guys are getting what I'm trying to say here, because that's really what gets them going. When they think about doing the right thing, they think about the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that regardless of whether you get a reward or not, I mean, if you really love somebody, it's not what they give you. Those of you who have been in love know what I'm talking about. It's not what that person gives you. It's how that person feels about you. from the actions that you do. وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى. I just want to give you kind of an analogy just to bring this idea closer to you. So, because these are scattered thoughts, I would like to give you just one final piece of counsel on this. Before you talk about Islam with anybody, whether it's your spouse, your sister, your brothers, siblings, relatives, family members, children, kids, sons, daughters, anything, you first of all learn the personality of the person you're talking to. What do they respond to? Are they a person that responds to fear? Or are they a person that responds to enticement? Or are they a person that is just more about the thing itself? Once you know and understand that, then you can tailor your message in a way that resonates with them without disregarding the other aspects of Islam. And you actually have an example of that with the Prophet ﷺ in how he spoke to people. And the greatest contrast we see that in how he spoke to the different companions is look at how he spoke to the Bedouins, for example, that came, and look at how he spoke to the city people that came to him. Look how he spoke to the Christians, how he spoke to the Jews, how he spoke to the polytheists. Look at how he spoke to the Arabs versus the Romans. Like, there was a difference in how he spoke to the people and what he put first in his message as primary importance, because you mentioned the first thing as the most important thing. So he puts the first thing, and then the last thing is also a very important thing. So he started off his message and his discourse with people and finished it with the thing that resonated the most with the people. So that's really it, man. When you talk to people, recognize who you're talking to. Don't project your own desires and your own motivations and what resonates with you onto everybody else, because they're not you. People are different. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Assalamu alaikum. So now you've seen some of the videos. I'm going to be trying to post these scattered thoughts, I'm actually going to call it, because they're just scattered thoughts, as often as possible. I'm trying to go for a minimum of 4 times a week, but I'm trying to build this platform on YouTube. So I'm hoping that if you enjoy this content, that you would subscribe, like, comment below, and share this video, and tell your mommy, tell your daddy, tell your pops, tell your grandpa, tell your grandma, tell everybody. If there is any benefit that can be derived from these, I would really appreciate it if you can spread it.